The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, the sound slicing through the elegant murmur of the Grandview Plaza ballroom like a gunshot. 200 heads turned toward table 7, where Lauren Thompson stood with her hand still extended, trembling with indignation, her diamond bracelet catching the light from the crystal chandeliers above. Across from her, Malcolm Davis remained seated, his expression unchanged, though a single drop of vintage Dom Perignon traced a path down his tailored Brioni tuxedo. I said, "You're in my seat." Lauren's voice carried across the room now, sharp enough to cut through the string quartet's rendition of Vivaldi. Her husband, Alec, appeared at her side within seconds, his face already flushed with a particular shade of red that came from 3 whiskeys and wounded pride. Malcolm slowly reached for his napkin, dabbing at the champagne on his lapel with deliberate care. He'd known this evening would be challenging. He'd prepared himself for the sidelong glances, the momentary confusion when he'd handed his invitation to the door staff, the subtle shift in conversation when he'd introduced himself to the other guests. But this public confrontation carried a weight that pressed against his chest like a physical thing. "Sir, I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Malcolm began, his voice steady and quiet. The kind of quiet that commanded attention rather than demanded it. "This is table 7. My reservation—" "I don't care what your reservation says," Alec interrupted, moving closer, his 6'2" frame used like a weapon. "This table was reserved for the Thompson family 6 months ago. I don't know who you think you are, but you need to move, now." The ballroom had gone silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, their bows suspended in midair like frozen rain. Malcolm could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, could sense the phones being discreetly lifted, the videos already recording. This was the moment that would define the evening, possibly more. He thought of his grandmother, who'd raised him in a 2-bedroom apartment in South Chicago, who'd scrubbed floors in buildings like this one to put him through school. She'd taught him 2 things. Dignity couldn't be taken, only given away, and silence was sometimes the loudest response. But tonight, Malcolm chose words. "Mr. Thompson," he said, rising to his full height. At 6 feet, he met Alec's gaze directly. "I understand your confusion, but I assure you, I have every right to be here. My assistant confirmed this reservation last week. Perhaps we can ask the event coordinator to clarify." "Oh, I'm sure your assistant made a mistake," Lauren cut in, her voice dripping with condescension. She looked Malcolm up and down, her expression making clear exactly what she thought of his presence. These charity events do sometimes extend courtesy, invitations to, well, certain people for diversity purposes. But the premium tables? Those are for actual donors, major donors, people who've contributed significantly to the cause. Malcolm felt something cold settle in his stomach. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something older, something he'd felt countless times before in boardrooms, in country clubs, in luxury hotels. The assumption, the automatic dismissal, the casual cruelty that came dressed in expensive perfume and practiced smiles. "I see," he said softly. "And how much would one need to donate to qualify for a premium table, Mrs. Thompson?" Lauren laughed, a brittle sound that reminded Malcolm of breaking glass. "Well, our family donated $50,000 this year alone. We've been patrons of this gala for 15 years. So unless you've matched that." "Mrs. Thompson, I donated $2 million to this foundation 3 weeks ago." Malcolm's voice remained level, almost gentle. "Specifically designated for STEM scholarships for underprivileged youth. Perhaps that's why I was assigned table 7. The silence that followed was different now. It had texture, Wait. Malcolm watched as Lauren's face went through a rapid succession of expressions. Disbelief, confusion, and then something darker. Denial. That's absurd, Alex said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. If someone had made that kind of donation, we would have heard about it. I'm on the board, I would know. Perhaps the foundation chose discretion over publicity, Malcolm replied. Some of us prefer our philanthropy to speak quieter than our egos. That was when Alex's face turned truly red. He took another step forward, close enough that Malcolm could smell the whiskey on his breath, could see the network of broken capillaries across his nose. Listen here, you arrogant. Is there a problem here? A new voice cut through the tension. Malcolm turned to see Jennifer Chen, the Gala's event coordinator, approaching with quick, nervous steps, her tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. Behind her, 2 security guards followed, their expressions carefully neutral. Yes, there's a problem, Lauren said immediately, her voice rising. This man is sitting at our table, and he's refusing to move. We've had this table reserved for months. Now we arrive to find it occupied by someone who clearly doesn't belong here. Jennifer's eyes widened as she looked down at her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. Malcolm watched her face carefully, saw the moment she found his name, saw the color drain from her cheeks as she undoubtedly saw the donation amount next to it. Mrs. Thompson, Jennifer began, but Alec cut her off. Don't Mrs. Thompson me. I want this man removed from our table immediately. My wife and I have supported this gala for 15 years. We've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars. We deserve better than this kind of disrespect. Mr. Thompson, please, if you'll just let me explain. Jennifer tried again, but Lauren was already pulling out her phone. No, I don't want explanations. I want action. Either you remove this man right now, or I'm calling my attorney. This is harassment. This is reverse discrimination. Malcolm almost laughed at that, but the sound died in his throat when he saw the genuine distress on Jennifer's face. The young woman was trapped between protocol and power, between what was right and what was easy. He'd seen this before too, had watched others forced to choose between their conscience and their careers. It's all right, Malcolm said quietly, reaching for his jacket. I'll move. No. Jennifer's voice was sharp, surprising everyone. No, Mr. Davis, please. You don't have to move. This is your assigned table, She turned to the Thompsons, her professional mask cracking. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. This is Malcolm Davis. He's not only an invited guest, he's one of our largest donors this year. Your table assignment was changed to table 12 2 weeks ago. We sent you an email. We received no such email. Alex snapped. And even if we did, why would our table be changed? We've had the same table for a decade. Because Mr. Davis specifically requested a table near the stage for accessibility to the presentation area. As a major donor and tonight's keynote speaker, we accommodated his request. Your new table is actually quite nice, with an excellent view. Keynote speaker? Lauren's voice had gone shrill. This man is speaking tonight? That's impossible. The keynote speaker is supposed to be Richard Castellano, the venture capitalist. Mr. Castellano had to cancel last minute due to a family emergency, Jennifer explained, her voice steadier now. Mr. Davis graciously agreed to step in. He's the founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies, and I don't care if he's the King of England. Alec interrupted, his face now an alarming shade of purple. This is unacceptable. We are not going to be displaced by some affirmative action diversity hire who... That's enough. Malcolm's voice cut through the noise like a blade, quiet but absolute. He stood fully now, shoulders back, and for the first time since the confrontation began, he let his anger show. Not in his voice, which remained controlled, but in his eyes, which had gone hard as flint. "You can insult me, Mr. Thompson. You can question my right to be here, my qualifications, my worth. You can make your assumptions and let your prejudices show like the slip beneath a badly fitted dress. But let me be very clear about something." He took a step forward, and Alec actually stepped back. "I didn't get here through charity or diversity quotas or whatever convenient fiction lets you sleep at night. I got here by building a company from nothing, by working 90-hour weeks while my friends were enjoying their trust funds, by surviving every room full of people who looked at me the way you're looking at me now and assumed I was the help or the token or someone who'd stumbled into success by accident." Malcolm's voice never rose, never lost its measured cadence, but the words landed with the force of physical blows. "I earned my place at this table. I earned my seat in every boardroom, every investment meeting, every country club that reluctantly accepted my membership check. And I sure as hell earned the right not to have my evening interrupted by two people whose greatest accomplishment is being born to the right parents." The silence was absolute now. Even the background chatter from the bar had stopped. 200 people stood frozen, watching this scene unfold like spectators at a car crash, unable to look away. Lauren's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Alec's face had gone from red to white, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Now," Malcolm continued, his voice returning to its previous quiet courtesy, "you have two choices. You can go to your new table and enjoy this event like civilized people. Or you can continue this scene and make tomorrow's headlines about something other than the money we're raising for underprivileged children tonight. Your choice." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Alec grabbed Lauren's arm, his grip tight enough to leave marks. "This isn't over," he hissed, his voice low but carrying in the silence. "Do you have any idea who I am? What I can do? My family has connections in this city that go back generations. I'll have you blacklisted from every charity event, every gala, every organization that matters. You'll be persona non grata before the week is out." Malcolm allowed himself a small smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Is that so? Well, Mr. Thompson, you should probably know something else before you start making threats." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward Alec. "Does the name Thompson Enterprises mean anything to you?" Alec's expression changed instantly, color flooding back into his face. "That's my company, my family's company." "What?" "Not entirely your family's company," Malcolm corrected gently. "Approximately 33% of it belongs to Davis Capital Ventures, my investment firm. We acquired a significant stake during your Series C funding round 2 years ago. I believe my partner, Sarah Chen, handles that portfolio directly. She speaks very highly of your company's potential." He watched as understanding dawned on Alec's face, followed immediately by horror. Lauren grabbed her husband's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his jacket. "Alec, what is he talking about?" she whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear. But Alec couldn't speak. His mouth worked silently, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Malcolm felt no satisfaction in this moment. Only a weary recognition of a pattern he'd seen too many times before. The moment when privilege met consequence, when assumptions crumbled when people realized too late that their actions had prices they couldn't afford to pay. I don't generally make a habit of wielding business relationships as weapons, Malcolm continued, pocketing his phone. But since you brought up the subject of consequences, I thought you should have all the relevant information. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a speech to prepare. He turned away from them, back to his table, and sat down. The message was clear. The conversation was over. For a heartbeat, the Thompsons stood frozen, statues of humiliation. Then Lauren made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob, and practically ran toward the exit, Alec stumbling after her. The moment they disappeared through the ballroom doors, sound rushed back into the room like water into a vacuum. The string quartet started playing again, conversations resumed, glasses clinked. But Malcolm could feel the difference in the air, could sense the phones being tucked away, the videos being uploaded, the messages being frantically typed. This moment, this confrontation, was already spreading beyond these walls, taking on a life of its own. Jennifer approached his table cautiously, her face still pale. Mr. Davis, I am so incredibly sorry. That should never have happened. I don't know how the email about their table change didn't reach them. But that's no excuse for... It's not your fault, Malcolm said, and meant it. These things happen, though I would appreciate it if you could arrange for my jacket to be cleaned. Dom Perignon, as it turns out, does stain. She nodded quickly, professionally, but he could see the questions in her eyes, the same questions he saw in everyone's eyes after moments like this. How are you so calm? How do you not explode? How do you keep your dignity when others are determined to strip it away? The answer was complicated, built from years of practice and pain and the kind of endurance that became second nature when you had no other choice. But that wasn't what people wanted to hear. So he simply smiled and turned his attention to the program in front of him. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Malcolm made small talk with his tablemates, smiled for photographs, and reviewed his speech notes. But his mind was elsewhere, running through calculations he didn't want to make. How would this affect his business relationships? Would the Thompsons attempt retaliation through their social connections? Would this become another data point in the endless ledger of racial incidents that the media would dissect and debate until the next crisis pushed it from the headlines? When his name was called for the keynote address, Malcolm rose to polite applause and made his way to the stage. The spotlight was bright, hot on his face, and for a moment he stood at the podium in silence, looking out at the sea of faces. Some sympathetic, some curious, some still uncomfortable with what they'd witnessed. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I'm honored to be here tonight, though I'll admit the evening hasn't quite gone as planned." A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the crowd. But that's okay, because the work we're here to support, the children we're here to help, they're used to things not going as planned. They're used to doors being closed in their faces, to assumptions being made about their potential, to being told that certain spaces, certain opportunities, certain futures simply aren't meant for them. He paused, letting his words settle. I know because I was one of those children, raised by my grandmother in South Chicago after my parents died when I was 8. Free lunch at school, hand-me-down clothes. The kid who couldn't afford the field trips, who did his homework at the public library because we didn't have internet at home. The kid who was told, repeatedly, that college might not be realistic for someone with my background. Malcolm gripped the podium, his knuckles whitening slightly. But my grandmother believed in me. And one teacher, Mrs. Patricia Morrison at Lincoln High School, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. She encouraged me to apply for a STEM scholarship, the kind of scholarship your donations tonight will fund. That scholarship didn't just pay for college. It changed the trajectory of my entire life. It gave me access to opportunities, to networks, to possibilities I couldn't have imagined. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as he could. That's why I'm here tonight. Not because I'm the keynote speaker, not because of what happened earlier this evening, but because I remember what it feels like to be counted out before you even start. I remember what it means when someone takes a chance on you, invests in your potential, sees past circumstances to capability. His voice grew stronger, more passionate. The $2 million I donated to this foundation isn't charity. It's an investment. An investment in the next generation of innovators, creators, leaders who will come from neighborhoods and situations that society has written off. Because talent isn't rare. Opportunity is. And every child we help tonight is a Malcolm Davis who won't have to fight quite as hard to prove they belong. The applause that followed was genuine, thunderous. People rose to their feet, and Malcolm saw tears on some faces, nods of agreement on others. But he also saw the empty seats where the Thompsons should have been. A reminder that some people would never understand, would never see past their own prejudices to the humanity staring them in the face. He finished his speech, thanked the foundation, and made his way off the stage. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, messages flooding in. But he ignored them, focusing instead on the conversations with other donors, the photographs with scholarship recipients, the work that had brought him here in the first place. It was only later, in the car on the way home, that Malcolm allowed himself to check his phone. The video of the confrontation had gone viral. Millions of views already, shared across every social media platform, dissected by commentators and armchair analysts. The hashtag #Table7 was trending nationwide. His assistant had forwarded dozens of interview requests from major news networks. But it was the message from Sarah Chen, his business partner, that made his stomach drop. "Malcolm, we need to talk. Alec Thompson just called an emergency board meeting at Thompson Enterprises. He's claiming you're an unstable investor and demanding we sell our shares. This is going to get ugly. Call me." Malcolm leaned his head back against the leather seat and closed his eyes. Of course. Of course Alec wouldn't accept humiliation quietly. Men like him never did. They doubled down, they retaliated. They used every weapon in their considerable arsenals to punish anyone who dared to challenge their authority. The next morning, Malcolm woke to find his face on the front page of 3 major newspapers. The headlines varied, but the theme was consistent. Tech billionaire confronted at charity gala. Racism at high society event caught on camera. When privilege meets reality. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. His email inbox had exploded. And according to Sarah, Thompson Enterprises was in full crisis mode. "They're trying to spin this as a business dispute," Sarah explained over their emergency video call. Malcolm was in his home office, still in his running clothes from his morning jog, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "Alec is telling the board that you provoked him, that you're using your investment stake to harass his family, that this is all some kind of corporate power play." "And are they believing him?" Malcolm asked, though he already knew the answer. Sarah's expression was grim. "Some are. The old guard, the ones who've known the Thompson family for decades. But the younger board members, the ones who actually understand social media and public relations, they're panicking. The company's stock dropped 4% at opening this morning. Their corporate Twitter is getting hammered. Major clients are asking questions. Malcolm rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling into his bones. What do you recommend? Honestly, we wait. Let this play out. We have the moral high ground, we have the video evidence, and we have a board seat. Alex trying to fight a PR battle he can't win. Every time he opens his mouth, he makes it worse. She was right, of course. Over the next 48 hours, Malcolm watched as the story evolved and expanded. More videos emerged from other guests at the gala, capturing different angles of the confrontation. People began digging into the Thompsons' history, uncovering other incidents, other complaints. Former employees of Thompson Enterprises started speaking out anonymously about the company's culture, about discrimination and harassment that had been swept under the rug for years. The breaking point came on day 3, when 7 former Thompson Enterprises employees filed a class action lawsuit alleging racial discrimination and hostile work environment. Their attorney held a press conference, standing in front of a phalanx of cameras and microphones, detailing years of documented abuse, inappropriate comments, discriminatory practices in hiring and promotion. My clients have suffered in silence for too long, the attorney declared, her voice ringing with righteous anger. They were told to accept it, to be grateful for their jobs, to not make waves. But what happened at that gala? What Mr. Malcolm Davis endured? That gave them courage. Courage to speak up, to demand justice, to say that enough is enough. Malcolm watched the press conference from his office, a strange mixture of emotions swirling in his chest. Vindication, certainly, but also sadness, because he knew what these employees were about to face. The scrutiny, the questions, the attempts to discredit them. The price of speaking truth to power was never small. His assistant knocked on the door, poking her head in. Mr. Davis? I have Jennifer Chen from the gala on line 2. She says it's urgent. Malcolm picked up the phone, curious. Jennifer, hello. What can I do for you? Mr. Davis, Her voice was thick with emotion. I just wanted to tell you that I submitted my resignation to the foundation this morning. What? Why? Because I let you down. I should have intervened sooner, should have protected you from that situation. Instead, I froze. I let those people treat you like that. And I can't work for an organization that didn't have better protocols in place to prevent something like that from happening. Malcolm was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Jennifer, what happened wasn't your fault. You were put in an impossible situation. That's not an excuse. You showed me what real dignity looks like that night, Mr. Davis. The way you handled yourself, the grace you showed even when you had every right to lose your temper. It made me ashamed of my own cowardice. You weren't a coward. You were professional and kind in a situation designed to strip away both those qualities. Don't resign over this. I already have. But I did want to ask you something. I heard you're starting a new initiative, something about second chances for young people? Malcolm smiled despite himself. News traveled fast. I am. The Second Chances program, aimed at providing opportunities for young people who face discrimination or systemic barriers. Why do you ask? Because I want to help, if you'll have me. 3 weeks after the gala, Alec Thompson was officially removed as CEO of Thompson Enterprises by a unanimous board vote. The company's stock had plummeted 41%. Major contracts worth $18 million had been canceled, and the class action lawsuit was moving forward despite frantic attempts at settlement. Lauren Thompson had resigned from her positions on 3 charitable boards, and their social circle, once impenetrable, had developed sudden and convenient memory problems about ever being close to the family. Malcolm didn't take pleasure in their downfall. He wasn't built for schadenfreude, no matter how justified it might be. But he did recognize the rare moment of accountability, the unusual instance when consequences actually caught up with privilege and prejudice. His phone rang. Sarah Chen, again. "You're not going to believe this," she said, skipping any greeting. "Alec Thompson just called me personally. He wants to meet with you." "Absolutely not." "Wait, hear me out. He's not asking for mercy or trying to negotiate. He says, and I quote, he wants to make things right." His words. Malcolm leaned back in his chair, skepticism radiating through his silence. "I know," Sarah continued. "I don't trust it either. But his attorney was very specific. Alec wants to meet alone, no lawyers, no press. He says he has something to say to you, and only you." Against his better judgment, against every instinct screaming at him to decline, Malcolm agreed. They met at a small coffee shop in a neighborhood where neither of them were likely to be recognized, early on a Wednesday morning when the place was nearly empty. Alec arrived first, looking haggard in jeans and a wrinkled button-down, a far cry from the confident aristocrat from the Gala. Malcolm sat across from him, saying nothing, waiting. The silence stretched between them like taffy, thin and brittle. Finally, Alec spoke. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to apologize. But I needed to say it, to your face, without cameras or lawyers or anyone else around. I was wrong. Not just wrong, I was cruel, prejudiced, and everything my grandmother fought against when she marched with Dr. King in the 60s. He laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that's the irony. My family loves to talk about our civil rights legacy, our progressive values, how we've always been on the right side of history. But when it mattered, when I was actually faced with a black man in a space I thought belonged to me, every ugly assumption came spilling out." Malcolm remained silent, his face unreadable. "I've spent the last 3 weeks in therapy," Alec continued. "Real therapy. Not the country club version where you complain about your golf handicap. And I'm starting to understand how deep this goes. How I was raised to see the world in terms of who deserves what, who belongs where. How I never had to question those assumptions because they always worked in my favor." He met Malcolm's eyes for the first time. "I destroyed my own life, my company, my reputation, my marriage. Lauren filed for divorce yesterday, by the way. And I deserve all of it. Every consequence, every loss. Because you were right that night. My greatest accomplishment was being born to the right parents. Everything else I just thought I earned because I was too blind to see all the advantages that came with my last name." Malcolm took a sip of his coffee, letting Alec's words settle in the space between them. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to do something with whatever's left of my life. Something that actually matters. I'm starting a foundation using what's left of my personal fortune. It'll focus on combating unconscious bias in corporate environments, funding training programs, supporting discrimination lawsuits. I want to call it the Second Look Foundation, because that's what I needed. A second look at myself, at my behavior, at everything I thought I knew." He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "These are the incorporation papers. I'm naming you to the board of directors. You don't have to accept, and you definitely don't have to forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I heard you. That night at the gala, when you said dignity can't be taken, only given away, you were right. And I'm trying to learn what that means." Malcolm opened the folder, scanned the documents. They were legitimate, professionally prepared, and the Foundation's mission statement was thoughtful and specific. This wasn't a publicity stunt or an attempt at reputation rehabilitation. Or if it was the most elaborate and expensive one he'd ever seen. "I'm not interested in being your redemption story," Malcolm said quietly. "I'm not interested in making you feel better about what you did, or giving you absolution so you can sleep at night. I know, and I'm not asking for that. But," Malcolm continued, "I am interested in real change, in seeing people take accountability and do the actual work of transformation. So I'll tell you what, I'll consider joining your board, but first, you're going to work for me." Alec blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The Second Chances program I'm launching. We need people on the ground, working directly with young people who've faced discrimination. Not writing checks from a distance, but actually showing up. Teaching resume workshops, conducting mock interviews, sharing the messy reality of how business actually works." "Can you do that?" Yes. Yes, I can do that. It's not glamorous. It won't make headlines or win you any awards. You'll spend your days in community centers and public schools, working with kids who have every reason to distrust someone who looks like you. You'll hear stories that will break your heart and make you angry, and you won't be able to fix most of them. You'll just have to show up, keep showing up, and hope that your presence makes even a small difference. Alec nodded slowly. "When do I start?" 6 months later, Malcolm stood in front of a packed auditorium at Lincoln High School, his old school, preparing to announce the first cohort of Second Chances program recipients. The room buzzed with energy, filled with students and parents and teachers all hoping for a chance, for an opportunity, for someone to believe in potential others had overlooked. In the back row, he spotted Alec Thompson, sitting quietly next to a young man named Deshaun, who was one of the program's mentees. Alec caught his eye and nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement without expectation. Over the past months, he'd kept his word, showing up every week to work with students, listening more than talking, learning what it meant to use privilege as a tool for equity rather than a weapon of exclusion. Was it enough? Malcolm didn't know. Redemption wasn't a straight line or a simple narrative. People could change, but change was work, uncomfortable and endless. Alec was doing that work, but the results wouldn't be clear for years, maybe decades. What Malcolm did know was that the Second Chances program had 43 students in its first cohort, each one carrying dreams that deserved support. He knew that Jennifer Chen had built an operational infrastructure that would scale nationally. He knew that Thompson Enterprises, under new leadership, had committed to funding scholarships and had completely overhauled its hiring practices. And he knew that the video from that night at the Gala, which had been viewed over 30 million times, had sparked conversations in boardrooms and classrooms across the country. Conversations about bias and privilege, about dignity and accountability, about who deserves a seat at the table and who gets to decide. As Malcolm began his speech, he thought about his grandmother, about Mrs. Morrison, about every person who'd seen potential in him when others saw only limitations. He thought about the student in the front row wearing a too-big suit from Goodwill, whose eyes held the same hungry determination Malcolm remembered from his own reflection years ago. "Welcome," Malcolm said, his voice filling the auditorium, "to your second chance. Not because you need one. You've earned this moment through your brilliance and your persistence. But because the world gave you a first chance that wasn't fair, that was loaded with obstacles and assumptions and barriers that had nothing to do with your worth. So this is us, saying we see you, we believe in you, and we're investing in the future you're going to build." The applause was thunderous, hopeful, alive with possibility. And for the first time since that night at the gala, Malcolm felt something shift in his chest. Not closure. He wasn't naive enough to think this story had a neat ending. But something close to peace. The knowledge that visibility and accountability, combined with action, could create ripples that spread far beyond a single moment of confrontation. That night, after the ceremony, after the photographs and congratulations and tearful parents thanking him for giving their children a chance, Malcolm drove home through the city streets. His phone buzzed with messages, but he ignored them, content for once to simply exist in the quiet satisfaction of work that mattered. He thought about writing a statement for the media, something profound about change and justice and the long arc of history. But he was tired of statements, tired of being asked to perform his dignity for cameras and comment sections. Instead, he pulled over at a corner store, bought his grandmother's favorite candy, lemon drops, which he'd kept in a glass jar on her kitchen counter, and sat in his car, letting the taste bring back memories of simpler times. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. It was a message from Deshawn, Alex's mentee. "Mr. Davis, thank you for tonight. My mom cried. I never thought I'd have a chance like this. I won't let you down." Malcolm smiled, typed back a quick response. "You already haven't. Go celebrate with your family. Tomorrow, we start the real work." Because that was the truth that nobody wanted to hear in their viral moments and trending hashtags. The real work wasn't in the confrontation or the consequences or even the redemption. It was in the daily choice to show up, to see people's humanity, to use whatever power you had to create space for others to flourish. True change came from thousands of small decisions, repeated every single day, until the world slowly shifted beneath your feet. It came from dignity maintained in moments designed to strip it away, from accountability demanded even when consequences seemed impossible, from belief in potential that society had decided to ignore. Malcolm started his car and pulled back onto the street, heading home through a city that had never quite known what to do with him, but had finally learned it couldn't ignore him. The lights of downtown glimmered in his rearview mirror, bright and distant, and ahead, the road stretched dark and uncertain. But he'd walked uncertain roads before, had navigated darker moments than a confrontation at a charity gala. He would keep walking, keep building, keep showing up for the next generation of dreamers who needed someone to believe. And maybe, just maybe, the world would keep shifting until those dreams no longer seemed impossible. Until every talented kid in every forgotten neighborhood had their fair shot. Until the color of your skin or the circumstances of your birth mattered less than the content of your character and the strength of your determination. It was a long way off, that world. But Malcolm Davis had learned patience from his grandmother, persistence from Mrs. Morrison, and purpose from every door that had been slammed in his face. He was in it for the long haul, ready to keep fighting, keep believing, keep choosing dignity every single day. The table was big enough for everyone. It always had been. Some people just needed to be taught how to share. If this story of courage, accountability, and the fight against systemic injustice resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that inspire change. Share this video with your friends and leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, and also give us your thoughts on Malcolm's journey and how we can all take steps toward a more inclusive and equitable future. And remember, visibility brings power. Together, we can make a difference.